Okay, guys, I think we can start. Again, hello everyone, and welcome to our Vue.jsTalks number 3. It's fantastic to see both familiar faces and new ones here today. For those of you who joining us for the first time today, I'm Pavel, developer from Epicmax, a team of developers deeply passionate about Vue.js. We are the creators of Vue.stick UI framework, and we are always striving to contribute to the Vue ecosystem to empower developers like you. So we started Vue.jsTalks, just as a reminder, with a simple goal to share knowledge, connect with like-minded people, and create a space where collaboration and innovation can flourish. It's been incredible to see how this initiative has grown over the past 2 meetups we already had, and we are thrilled to continue the journey with all of you today. So, as I said, this is already our 3rd meetup, and we're excited to keep the momentum going. Vue.jsTalks has become a monthly tradition, and we're committed to making it even better with each event. So today, we have another fantastic lineup of speakers ready to share their insights. Our agenda for today is Micro Frontends by Klaus Hamperl. Sorry if I am pronouncing it wrong. Rethinking Solid Principles in JavaScript Part 2 by Dmitry Raichov. It's continuation from our first meetup. And the third one in a row is Maximizing Components Customization by Yauheni Prakopchuk. So thanks again for joining. You can leave your comments, you can react, enable your camera, and we will try to make a section after each speaker to answer your questions. So Klaus, please go ahead. Thank you.
Yo, hello everybody. At first I try to share my screen. I need this one. So, okay. I'm here today to present you micro frontends with Vue.js and Vite, as we use by INL. First of all, let me short introduce myself. So here. My name is Klaus. I'm front-end team lead at Einhell Germany AG. We are making tools for garden, workshop, and so on. And today I want to present you how we use micro frontends at our company. Let me start first with the question, what are micro frontends? Provide a little picture for you how it could end up. What is the problem? What do you want to solve? We want good and stable and maintainable front ends, and this is a goal. This is, in my opinion, is hard to reach. So it even gets harder if you have big teams or a lot of teams which are working on one application. Another big topic, reusability. You always have the things that you have to reuse everything and reinvent you don't want to reinvent the wheel over and over again. So there's one solution for this, and this is micro frontends, in my opinion. In the backend, we notice a solution already as distributed services. So we have small, specialized applications that do one job. They are easy to maintain, easy to update, and if you have different teams, every team can work separately on one part of it. So let's put this idea and move it to the front end. Why not split up our monolithic front end to some smaller services? Before we start in detail, I want to take a little look back to the history where micro frontends are coming from. First time the term micro frontend was appeared in 2011 at the Software Architects event. After it was pronounced here or founding here, some big companies start with it. For example, Netflix or Amazon are early adapters of this concept. Later on, for example, Zalando brings his own solution how to solve the micro frontend problem, the architectural problem itself. On 2016, after the big companies have great success with it. It appears for the first time on the ThoughtWorks technology radar. I saw you here a little screenshot. It was on place 15 for the S's, so you can see it was time for it. In 2017, single-page applications was especially recommended for the implementation for micro frontends. And on 2020, at the end of 2020, we have Jackson, which released his masterpiece, Module Federation, as a plugin for Webpack. 1 year later, ThoughtWorks recommended the Module Federation as implementation way for micro frontends. And till now on, micro frontends are not that adapted as it could be. So they are still in early stages compared to backend microservices. Let's talk about some pros and cons for micro frontend architecture. One pro is we have an easy transition from a monolithic frontend to some separated applications. So let's say you have a big monolithic application. It's easy to split this up step by step and feature by feature and provide small little pieces from this application and build them together. One of them, big effort is you get a smaller code base, of course. This is why we start micro frontend per definition. We want small little code bases. Next big pro is you can get independent deployment. Means, let's say you have 3 small pieces, micro frontend A, B, and C. You push them to your source control and push it to your build and test pipeline, and then deploy this separates app to your production system. At the end, you have one application, it's called the host or wrapper, which combine all those applications. And so you are able, let's say you have a small change in micro frontend A, just push your changes, let them deploy to the production system, and you have just this change live on your main system. Next big pro, independent teams. If you have a big company or you work with freelancers or so on, each team are able to build the application separately. So each part of this application, what he is involved in. Even it's possible to use different frameworks like Vue, like React, all in one application. But do we want this? I don't like this approach, but technically it's possible. Let's talk about some cons. One con is the infrastructure and deployment. Even if it's easier to deploy different parts of the application, it means as well you have a lot of separate configuration for your deployment. You have maybe, you need to set up some subdomains, you need to set up different deployment pipelines, or maybe you have to monitor everything separately. So it brings a little bit more complexity in the deployment itself. For the code, one thing, yeah, the code base gets smaller, but you get even a little bit more complexity in your code base because you need to handle the configuration of the micro frontend things. If you want to communicate with all the separate remotes, all the little apps together, it will could be getting complexer. And when especially dependent sharing comes in, like I18N or user authentication or whatever, the complexity could be increased here. And of course, it's dedicated for monolithic frontends, so it suits hard on small projects. The effort is too much. You have to big overhead, in my opinion, that it will not really make sense to fit it in smaller projects. So in conclusion, micro frontends are here to breaking up big and scary things into smaller maintainable pieces, and we can choose our technologies, our code base, or our teams to evolve, to make it able to evolve. Everybody can work independently. Okay, let's take a look how we can manage this micro frontends with Vue and Vite. To make this magic happen, we need a little plugin for Vue, which is called Vue Plugin Federation. It's provided by Origin.js, and it's fully inspired by Webpack, and it's fully compatible with it. So if you have a Vue application which is written in Vue and a React application which uses Webpack, it will be working together because the configuration is the same. To use it, you need at least 2 projects. Of course, you need one wrapper or a host application, so it's called, and one remote application. I got a little scheme for you how this hangs together. In the right, you see here we have our wrapper application, our host. In this application, we have one remote. For example, it's the sidebar, which is an independent app. We have another remote app. It's the main app. This has another remote app for itself, the app header, and everything will be set it up or built together in the host application. Let's take a look how we set up our Vue with the plugin federation. It's just a little bit of code, maybe a little. So let's get started. Open your existing project or create a new one, whatever, and then install the plugin, which is at Origin Vue Plugin Federation. And as next, we start to configuring the plugin. All configurations have to be done in the Vite config.js. First of all, we import our plugin. In the plugin section, we call the federation function and give them some params. For example, here name, file name, expose. I will be get into is in the next foil. Let's take a look at the host configuration. Here we see especially the remote, where we can define our remote. In the remote, to use this remote, we go to one of our Vue files. Let's say it's the app Vue here. We use the define async component from Vue, where we do a dynamic import from our remote application, and then we can use it as usually as a component here. Let's take a look at the config in detail. First of all, we have a name. The name is required especially for the remotes, because in the host you need to import the remote by the name you given here. You can define a separate file name. The default is remote entry. You can rename it here into whatever you want. The next thing is exposes. Here you can define the list of components which you want to expose to your host application or to your wrapper. The separate thing, for the host, you can define a remote. So here you can declare the components you want to use from your remote application. And there's a shared. Here you can define which dependencies you want to share, your host wants to share with the remote applications. So the shared itself has some detail which I want to show you here, because you can do different things. For example, you can define a version. This version only works on the host side. This means the version you here define is the version that's used for the remotes. On the other hand, on the remote side, you can define a required version. So remote can say, I need at least version 2. If the host is possible to deliver this version, then it will be okay. Otherwise, the dependency from the remote will build into the host into the remote application. You can control this generate or this build-in of the dependencies with the generate flag. The generate flag means if it sets to true, the dependency will always build into the remote application. The generate file has no effect on the host side. The dependencies will always be built into the chunk files of the host file because they have to provide this. Next, I want to show you some live examples, how we are using micro frontends at Einhell. They are everywhere. Nah, not true. But let's take a look at two examples how we use it. We have two approaches. At the moment, we use the micro frontend approach for our website. We use it in a special form, and we use it for some of our business applications. Let me start with the example from our website. From our service side, we have here a little formula for customer complaints. This is a formula where a user is able to make a claim for a warranty repair service. Incomplete, we have here 8 individual applications built in. The first application is the host itself. This application is the final part that will be embedded in our website. And I will start with the config, how this is configured. We're using here export function because we have some configuration logic before we finally return the defined config. And here in the plugin section, in the federation configuration, federation function, we provide the name. We provide its remote, so which applications are used by this host. And we define our shared dependencies. So you see we share Vue, Pinia, Axios, Keycloak for authentication. We have our components library and some other stuff. In our app view, we import each remote as a dynamic import with the usage of define async component. Later on in the template part, we use it as a such normal Vue component. For here example, I have the address book. I can provide my emits, what I have on this thing, or here I have my contact header form. I can even give props to it, and it will be used in the remote front end. Let's take a look at the remote part. So each remote provides one part of the formula step. So I want to show you the article identification, how we use this. So here we have the config again. Same stuff here. Now we have the name. This is the remote app. So this is called the article search. The remote search app itself use another remote. This is our remote service where we handle all of the authentication stuff and so on. This is used by all apps. But here comes the important part for the remote application. It's the exposes. You see here we expose 3 components, and special here one is the component itself. Then we expose our I18N files, and we expose our global Pinia store here. And we also defined the shared. It should try to use the same shared dependencies as the host. So if they're available from the host, these dependencies will not build into the final remote app. Let's take a quick look at the final application. It's just some input bits for the contact data. We have our article identification. We have our special fields for error description. For special parts, we can request some separate spare parts, which is a little table. And we have a summary, at least. Okay. As next, I want to show you our in-house business application. Here we have the EWMS, which is our Einhell web management system. This is a little system which combines different small apps to one big portal application, let's say. Let's take a look at the structure. You see here we have the red, the host application again. This is what is reachable over a domain. And this is built up with different parts. So we have a sidebar, which is a separate application. We have a global search for whatever. It's a separate application, and all the colorful blocks in the middle here are all separate apps. So let's take a little look. I've provided some examples for you here for the shop locator. Here we can define our service partners and can give them some addresses, Google Map latitudes and longitudes. So this helps us to display our shops where you can buy our stuff on our website. As next, we have our AWMS, which is an article web management system. Here we are creating all our informations for our articles for the website. What challenges do we want to solve with this approach here? So, first is the app will be expanded over and over again from different teams. So we have one team here in our home base in Landau, Germany. We have some developers in Greece. We have some developers elsewhere. So everybody will work on this independently and so on. One big technical challenge we have here, a lot of these apps has its own routings. The next thing, same too for the translations files, so for the IHNN. And a store for sharing of data was needed. And we have the permission that the host should always be available. So even one of the modules gets offline because deployment goes wrong or something else, the host application should always be available because the other modules should be run over and over. Because of the time, I want to show you two examples, two problems how we managed this. First was expand of the app with different teams. Yeah, that's why we choose this approach with micro frontends. So easy thing. So every team can work independently on its part of this portal or this application. So the second thing, how we solve those problems is this on routings. Why it is a problem? Because there can only be one active instance of the Vue router, and this active instance is on the wrapper application on the host. So each remote application should share its own routes with the host application. How we set this up? First, we set up our routes in the remote application as usually. So we have our route.js file, we create our routes array with the different routes in it. Next step is we expose those route.js file in our white config in the expose section. And then we can use those these remote routes in our host application. First of all, in the remote section of the host application, we import the remote entry as before. Then I jump into my route file in the host application, so in the route.js. Here I create a try-catch block where I try to import the remote at first. If the imports will be successed, I will get a widget which have default and a default property and the default and the routes property. And in the routes property, I can find my defined routes in the remote app. So I just spread it into the final array, and then I will return this. If something went wrong, I have a catch and can do my error handling here. So this step is done. And now I have my routes available on the host application. The same approach is used for the translation files. Because of the time, I will not get in detail, but it's the exactly same approach as we used in the routing files. And same story for the Ausdata. Here we use a special service, which is our EMS service. I want to show this service in detail. The EMS service provides two functionalities that we use in all our remote applications. One is a global pinwheel store. Then as next we have our identification service, which is using keylog under the hood. And we have our Axios service, which creates an interceptor for all our Axios calls and providing bureau tokens and refresh tokens and so on. Take a look at the global store. For example, we store the logged in user here. Then I have our authentication service. The service takes care for the whole login process, so login, logout, token, and role management. It's just a little composable, a little function here. It's called use keylog here, and I have my keylog options, and it does everything that I can use in all my remotes and host applications. So, for example, here my login user and my logout user, loading the profile, and so on. So this makes the service makes this functionality available for all my micro-frontend applications. And the last service is our access service. This is connected to the authentication service because it's create the interceptor for provides me the interceptor for each access call I use, so which provides me the bureau token and has a little functionality to refresh the token when it's needed. Just a short look at the config here. There's nothing new here. I have my federation function, provide the name, and expose the global store, the keylog service, and the access service. So it means, in conclusion, you can expose your Vue component, you can compose such composables if you want, or you can compose stores from Pinia. So everything will work. So that's all from my side from here. I hope you enjoy. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Klaus. So we get one question in the chat.
Yeah.
Is there any GitHub repo as a template for micro frontends using Vue plus Vite?
Yeah, you can use there's a lot of examples at the Origin.js Federation module. They provide a lot of example apps for Vue, for React, for everything.
Okay, cool. We get one more.
Yeah.
What system did you use for slides?
Oh, this was Vue.js, I think. I have to Google this again. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. Vue.js is a little thing called here.
Cool. Good to know that.
I will provide it in the chat. Give me a second.
Reveal.js.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I will provide the link for the plugin, for the moderation Federation plugin in the chat as well, if it is okay.
Sure. Would be cool. I also have a few questions, if you don't mind, from my side. So maybe you have some practical advices, to how to determine is that reasonable to move some part of the application to another micro frontend?
Yes, you have to be really sure about what you do here because of the complexity that will be increased. So take care, you take a deep look at it. Is it worse for me? Does it fit to my actual situation? But if you can answer these questions with yes, then I would recommend to give it a try.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I understand, they should be carefully discussed from top, from the architectural point of view of whole application.
Yep.
Because when you say in that teams work independently,
Mm-hmm.
and they are still connected in host application, I'm impressed how to achieve this level of abstraction that teams can work independently.
Yeah, I can give you a real life example how this works by us now. As I mentioned before, we have some developers, they are they are located in Greece. So I just give them or our project managers give them the exactly things what you have to build. Let's say they have to build a little application for now, which provides us some data for catalogs. So they just focus on this little part. And from my side here, take care of the host application, and so I have to take care that everything works together.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, the little teams can specify on their work, and one team especially me here, I have to take care about that everything will work together and everything set it up.
Okay, so that leads that you need to have source of truth, let's say, to prevent some mistakes from other teams. For example, I noticed that you destruction roads in some of the configs, and I was asking myself that how to debug this if we have any errors there, any duplicated roles or any other stuff.
Yeah, let's start with this. This architectural framework then saves you from code reviews, I think. But for the configuration part, I recommend, or I do have this configuration on my own. So I know what I have to do. I have to take care about what dependencies are can be shared and whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. We had one more question from the chat. If one were to make a mobile port for the host application, could the micro frontend be available offline too?
No, because you have to reload. You have to load your the remotes are always loaded on startup from the app. So if the app was called, it tries to load the remote applications from the separate server. So if you're able to cache them somewhere, then maybe. But to be honest, I have no experience with this. So far, I know you have to need always on.
Yeah, thanks. So let's okay. We have an from Ryan.
Yes. Good evening. Can I ask a question?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I have a question. If while you are exposing component from different micro front end, how do you know about the props or the emits of this component in another part of this micro front end?
Yeah, good question. This is one problem I'm still working on. For now, I have decided to create so global types, as we know at types when we import something. Otherwise, you have just one chance. This is good communication. In this case, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And last question from the chat. Do you also need some tooling to support state of different micro frontends? For example, for one of my project, we used a big Excel spreadsheet for like 20 columns. Wonder if it's a case for a federation.
I just use for this state of the microphone. I just use Pinia stores. This works out of the box. You don't have to need anything else. You can set your store as a remote, and you can use it in every other remote or in your host applications. Maybe this helps.
Sorry, maybe I can clarify the question. So I meant like not for state management, but rather for like current state. So for micro frontends we used, it was like for different micro frontends we have different Vue versions, we have like different node versions, we have different like stable and stable status, and stuff like that. So is it also
Yeah, I understand. I think I understand. You can, if you have one possibility to define in your remote which version you actually need to run. And if the host is able to provide this, then you can use this dependency. Do you mean this, or I'm wrong?
Yeah, I'm just speaking from management perspective, because we had like for each micro frontend to track the status, and like the micro frontends that didn't have priority, they went down. So like old micro frontend, it might be using like Vue version 2.6, and the newest one they will be like on version 3, and then they'll use UI library, also newest version. So they're like diverging.
Then you have to provide in your remote applications the required version. In this case, is 2.6, and if the host provides it's the Vue version 3, then the remote versions will build in this only dependency, because here does not fit together.
I hope this answered your question, Yauheni. So thanks a lot. Great presentation and very interesting topic, Klaus. Thanks for participating in our
I thank you for the invitation. I hope it could help somebody. And I say thank you. Thank you for listening.
Definitely. Thanks. So let's keep moving and let's go to our second speaker, Dmitry Raichev, with his topic about rethinking solid principles in JavaScript Part 2. So microphone to you, Dmitry.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
So yeah, I'm gonna share my screen first. Hopefully now you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, my name is Dima, and I'm a software engineer here at Epicmax. And today I'm gonna proceed with the topic regarding the solid principles in JavaScript and web development. And just as a quick recap for those who didn't see the first part or that simply forgot, last time I covered the first three principles from the list, like the single responsibility, open closed, and list of substitution principles. And today I'm going to focus on interface segregation and dependency inversion principles. So let's go. Interface segregation principle. What does it mean? Sorry, not this one. Yeah. This principle was formulated by Robert Martin in the following way, like you see on the screen. Clients should not be forced to depend upon interfaces that they do not use. It means that you need to divide the class interface into several ones and use it through interfaces when passing to the client. And here we need to explain what are the client. The client is the code that uses our abstractions. Like in simple words, the code that uses our code. And getting back to the principle itself, we don't mean that we need to create separate interface for every property or method. There should be some balance here. And there isn't something like a universal formula or approach, but it's rather a practical experience to achieve it. And what we can benefit from the principle, when it's applied correctly, will reduce coupling in our code, and it will make it more flexible, and it will pave the way for injecting dependencies in our code. Because when the signature of our functions or classes doesn't matter, when the signature matches, it will work despite having different implementations. And what's important here that you need to get better with the experience at it and develop that skill of separating interfaces constantly, because all the interfaces you create should be consistent. If some class implements a whole pack, like a handful of interfaces, we must constantly check if all types are matched and all that. So look at the example. For instance, we have some message class. It's not an implementation, just like typings definition. And we can see here that this class is responsible for creating messages and sending messages. And we can notice that it breaks the single responsibility principle. And we are gonna try to break it down. And while breaking it down, we can think of what interfaces will have our new classes that we will create. And also we need to think that our new classes should know as less as possible about each other. Ideally, they should know nothing apart from their own responsibility. And our new classes should refer to each other. Should not refer to each other, but they can only refer to correspondent interfaces. And we can put those classes into different modules and then substitute something that is similar and follows the same contract. Let's look at the use case for our code. Like we can have some data to create our message, and we can attach some file to it, and then we'll try to send it. And if we get any error, we can warn our user or whatever it is, a client, about this error. So we can see here that everything is curated by a single class, and we'll think how to split it up. First of all, again, we will not operate here with concrete classes. We will create interfaces just for the purpose of demonstrating the idea. So we can see here that we split up the message, and now it only contains fields that are directly connected with the message itself, and we divided the logic between message and handling the message. Now we can see some function to send the messages, which will operate with some request API, etc. And we also have something like prepare attachment, which will prepare the data for attaching new messages. So, and for our new functions, we have different interfaces. Like we could have just one, like something like file, but because they look similar, and you can see here, for instance, that they all have a file name field, but they will be consumed by different services and in different ways. So, for instance, message attachment will be used when we already have something like a blob to create an attachment. Message data will represent those attachments that will have been already uploaded. And the message file allows attachments to use file system API, for instance, if we are talking about the web API. And that function, prepare attachment, will demonstrate this idea of having, of having something like a message file, because as you can see here, it will simply create attachments for to consume it further by the attach function. So and now we can see how we can use our new classes at this with the same use case as we did before. Now you can see that we create files using the message data class, and we create the same message, but we can attach new files using the blobs, and we can prepare some attachment using the file system and attach it again, and then we will try to send the message using the different system, different like service instead of just one class, and we will use some logger. And with this approach, we divided our logic into different parts, and we created several interfaces to consume by function that are awaiting a certain data structure. Let's call it like this. So, okay, the next principle is dependency inversion, and sorry, this is probably the most difficult one, and at the same time, it's the most useful. It allows us to build an architecture of our application rather than just structure, because other principles are more about structuring things, whereas dependency inversion principle is about layering our abstractions. And what we want to achieve here is that our upper layers are not dependent upon lower layers, so that domain specific or business logic could be portable and flexible, and we could substitute different abstraction with different implementation details, and that's something that paves the way to the clean architecture, and that builds architectural boundaries for our application. Let's look at some simple example. It's what you see on the screen is so-called onion architecture. I simplified it just to explain the idea, but usually we have some domain model like in the center, which represents the most universal thing of our application that can be portable, and we can use it everywhere on the back end, on the front end, for mobile or for desktop applications, like anything. And the more the main part is nailed down to any platform specific API, the more it becomes useless. And then we have an application layer, let's say, and this layer will provide services for our clients, which can be presentation, like presentational clients, persistence, which is the storage and infrastructure, whatever. And when we return back to our previous example with the message, in our code, in our initial code, we have some model similar to what you can see on the screen right now. Like the message will import some functions from message service, and message service in its turn will depend on some platform specific things like logger, like storage, request, API, whatever. And what should we do to get rid of this tight coupling? We can create like separate abstractions. And on this diagram right now, you can see how we can apply dependency inversion principle. Instead of relying on the concrete implementations, we try to use contracts representing all specific layers. And returning back to our onion model, like the message is the message would be our domain layer. The message service would be the application layer, and the platform specific things is our clients layer. Let's call it like this. And with this approach, we split everything up, and our layers are no longer directly connected to each other. They are connected by contracts. Let's look at the code examples. It could look something like this. You can see that it's the same use case that we had before, but instead of, for instance, directly importing our classes that are specific to the platform, we'd rather create some kind of strategy or factory to create our service, and to create, for instance, our logger, and use it like those functions, a factory function or strategy. They will know somehow in what environment they will be used. So in the similar way, like you know that some, for instance, create element function works, which allows us to use Vue.js or React in different platforms, like not only in the web, but for mobile application and desktop application as well. So that would be it for today from me. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dima. Do we have any questions in the chat? Yeah, no, when you're talking about the principles, it's always hard topic to me personally, but it absolutely doesn't mean that we as a developers don't need to think about it. We definitely need. And thanks for your presentation. That's really good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, listening.
Okay.
I hope it was useful, because not like over the internet, I didn't see many many useful materials to apply to the JavaScript world, and I tried to make it as clear as possible, and it turned out a hard task because when you try to simplify examples so that it can be like, so that we can use it for presentation in a short in a time frame, in a limited time frame. So it's hard to prepare something visual, you know, and understandable.
Yeah, I agree. We have one raised hand from Ryan. So Ryan, please.
Okay, thank you, Demi, for this presentation. As you mentioned, we don't have a lot of resources about implementation of like the clean architecture for the Vue.js, but I got some for React and Angular. But for Vue, it's there's not a lot of resources. Do you have any recommendation to implement this clean architecture, or any repo that you like more? Especially when we're talking about separating the presentation layer and the domain. So while using those store pedia and the composable, I think it's a little bit messy.
Sorry, I probably lost my connection for a moment.
Okay, I mean, while we are using the store like Pinia and using those composable things, what do you think? Do you have any consideration to implement the clean architecture when talking about separation, the presentation layer from the domain and the application? Is there any consideration to do that?
From, if I understand correctly, you mean that is there any good example over the internet,
Yeah,
probably
for
open
sure.
source?
Yeah, I found a lot of React and Angular, but not for Vue, as I'm a Vue developer.
Yeah, I understand. Probably I I I cannot recommend something specific, but you can look at the libraries itself, like the Vue.js or Next.js at their architecture, and you will see that in some ways they follow a lot of principles from the clean architecture, and probably that's why they became so widespread, and now we can use Vue.js even for mobile apps as well as React and for desktop apps. So, and what enables this feature is the clean architecture of Vue.js in itself. So yeah, probably I would start with the libraries itself. So that's my answer.
Yeah, at least we can, after the meeting, we can make some little investigation to find something good, right? Yeah. So thanks again, Dima. Great presentation, great team, and let's move on. Let's move on to our last but not least speaker, Yauheni, with his maximizing component customization.
All right. Hello, everyone. So my presentation is not as technically advanced. I'm using Google Slides. Hope that works. So my topic would be maximizing components customization. It's a bit like work in progress right now, but I still want to share my findings. So who I am? I have some experience with Vue.js development, and I also work with VueStickUI and VueStickAdmin, where we value customization highly. So I'll try to be quick, maybe not super quick, but so we already a bit over time. I think still works fine. So topics I want to cover is first when should you care about component customization? Second, I will go back to the ground and show you some examples, some like implementation options, and then we'll talk a bit about how much customization is optimal maybe for your project for you. Let's get started. So when should you care about customization, component customization, damn it. So a first option would be when you are providing your component to different projects. So like you have a maybe different team, maybe you ship in NPM package, they import it, they do not like it the way you ship it, they want to customize it, they want to tweak some stuff, they want to apply some global configs. So it's meaningful. Another one is when you need flexible theming. Again, maybe one project, but you use the same component many places. Maybe you ship it to a user and user applies some theme, stuff like that. And maybe your component is extended a lot. Again, like maybe some data table, you throw it across the application, you provide some stalls, you provide some entry points so that it's customizable, so that you don't have to create a new component every time. Okay, so and we can go to most exciting part, which is down to code. I prepared a couple of stories for you and to showcase different customization approaches. So one you're probably very familiar with, it's props events. And the way it works is very simple. You provide a prop goes down. You provide an event goes up. Very basic. When you want to apply it is when you have a pretty big feature. So for something like very, very small, you can deal with styling. So when it's like a bit bigger, you can use props, then it's probably fine. So it is, I think, most balanced option for customization, so probably something you would use most of all. And you can pass through props with reactive objects. So this allows you to increase bandwidth a lot, because if you use just props alone and not pass objects, it's kind of hard to to adapt to a big config, to a big nested config. So sometimes you can just create one object and then throw it and go through like all the net of components. It's also pretty easy to refactor from, so you can again use props first, then you get new information, let's say, about your component customization, you show to customer, they decide maybe, okay, so let's move with this component, maybe let's not move. And then you can decide where to move from props. So they're good like intermediate solution. Cons is that you have to limit props number. So component with 50 props, please don't do it. Another problem is that when you have a lot of pass-through props, that's a problem. vbind is very tricky to balance, very tricky to debug, and passing props with one by one and the meets back, it's just a lot of code. It looks horrible. Another option is slots. Here I prepared two examples. One is like basic SWOT, and second is like before, like multi-SWOT option. So you want to use it where you expect users to replace parts of component. I'm well prepared. And for high customizability components, you pretty much want to apply these in all places where you can expect any kind of customization, because slots are low cost for implementation, and it might be still useful for some user. Pros from slots is that you can go deep into components without any limitations on template. So you can be as creative as possible. You can use any kind of HTML structure. You can use components. So pretty flexible. Problematic stuff is that you might lose some of the component behavior. For instance, when we go to multi-slot and we hover, nothing happens. Here, hover happens. So we just hover, just not hover. And it happens a lot of times. So, and it happens also with updates. So like one time you might have it, the update happens, you lose it. So hard to follow. And another tricky part is when you have like a lot of slots and slots and slots. Then again, it becomes a madness like that. Good luck figuring out which scope you are dealing with, because you can sometimes also use scope slots. Which one is here? So already like very troubling. So they are also having some limitations. Another tool is provide inject. Here I have example with Vue.stick tabs. And here you can see that we have a vModel value, and you can click on tabs, and magically, somehow, this vModel changes. But I don't have any connection from VA tab to VA tabs. While if we check our slots example, here I use scope slot, and I use select option. So we have this connection going. So what's going on here? Let's check it out. So we have VA tab component, and we can take a look. We have on tab click, so this is getting called when you click on the tab, and we have select tab method here. And if we take a look, this is being injected with this key from somewhere, and we can check where is it imported from. And we see that it's provided from tabs component. So what happens is that tabs component injects this object into tab, and then tab can inform the parent about any changes. So this covers like internal customization, allowing you to have like a more flexible structure of a component. And we can also cover like external customization. So here again, like example from Vue.stick, we have a VA config component, which allows you to essentially provide a config to a component. So in this case, I provide color and I provide icon to a component. And as you can see, this button is exactly the way I would expect it to. And I can remove it from here, and it turns back to normal. So similarly, you can apply it to your components, like have some provide config somewhere, and then it's getting applied to all your components in application. So it's a bit harder of implementation. So the way I like to think about it is like a store instance that's bound to your component. So like in tabs, you'll see like it's like a small store instance that is created particularly for these tabs, and it's a bit chunky. It's a bit bigger than like props, so you have to use it sparingly. So the thing about it is that it's very powerful. It's not as powerful as global objects. It's not as powerful as store, but it's still very powerful. So it's easy to misuse. And because it's easy to misuse, you can have issues with it. It's hard to debug. Like for instance, here with tabs, you can have a case where so basically for this to work, you have to have all components rendered and know about each other. And if something is not rendered, mid-render, some issues, maybe a bit broken, then you might have some very, very weird issues with it. So it requires a bit of expertise, a bit of debug, and maybe a spare usage. Another one is a dynamic component. So Vue has a construct which is component is, and this allows you to like basically use any component to replace this block. And in our case, we have two implementations of the component. One is default, and in second, we replace list item with custom child component with these perfectly looking clown icons. So let's see how it's done. We have this component defined somewhere. It's passed here. And here we check if it's provided in prop. We display is prop. And if it's not, then we will display the default component. So in all ways, this is component from prop would be working the same as the default component. So all props will be passed down to it, everything. All slots. So so this allows you to have this heavy override, this replacement, on-point replacement, with places that are hard to reach with slots. That sometimes may be like you have maybe JSON config, or not JSON, but JS config rather, and there you would like maybe to have a component or a particular maybe field, column, something, and you can have it this way. It is very flexible. It's even more flexible with slot because you have like typing support. Everything is very good. The problematic part is that it's a lot of code because you have to define component. Like every time it would be probably separate file, something very big. And in this component, another issue is that you have to support the full interface, or you have the same issue as what we had with Select, where you like some issues, some features might be dropping from your component, which is not great. And that is not great, something to discover after maybe a year of using this component. Something is not working. Yeah, and updates are tricky to handle. So you have some update for default component, your custom implementation might break. Next one is CSS variables. This is the one you're probably familiar with. Pretty simple, but I'll just maybe refer the memory. How it's done, you can use a wrapper with div or something and provide it in styles. And here you see like variable is passed to a button, and it's getting bigger than default. We can compare it with default size, right? This is the default size. Tricky thing about variable is that you can actually very easily, Storybook, please. No. Storybook decided to fail me. Okay, he's back. Okay, so we click on button, and you can just click on it and see what kind of variables do you have. And this makes it very easy to customize. You don't have to go to docs. Just can go check what you have here, copy it to your wrapper, and there you have it. Okay, so CSS variables, whenever you can use them, please use them. They're not good for features. They're good for like on-point CSS customization. So they're like small props you can think of. And they're also easy to scope because they're bound to HTML. And they also should be preferred to CSS overrides, which I didn't cover in these cases, but you probably know about. CSS variables, they are very limited. You can try to use something a bit crazy with it, but it's very limited technology. And you should limit the number of CSS variables. So what we try to do is generally try to only apply them to the stuff that has no potential to break component. And that's it with Storybook. I have one more thing with customization, which I think is very useful, because we use Tailwind often, and none of these really applies to Tailwind, right? Like you have like some classes, you have them nested down the component. How do you change them? How do you customize them? A tricky question. So there is a feature for Prime Vue called pass-through. So if you're implementing your component, you might consider something similar. And the way it works is that you have like an object, a nested object, and you would have like your components defined. And you can redefine CSS classes for particular nesting level of the object. So this allows you a full flexibility. You can reapply all classes to your like nested structure to your complex component in super flexible way. So you can replace all classes. But that's a bit of a heavy solution. But with Tailwind, I don't think we have a better option. Right. So how much customization should you do for your case? I think it should be as little as possible. Okay, next question is how to avoid customization. So we decided flexibility or customization is like expensive. So what options do you have? So one is actually outsourcing it to backend and telling them, okay, guys, please use HTML, SVG templates or something. If you're just having too much on your shoulders, you can also object strongly to a solution and tell, okay, we are not going to implement it. This is too hard. If it doesn't work, suggest them to use a separate component for like maybe this particular feature, and they use your customizable fancy one for other stuff. If that doesn't work, you can try to just ship composables and assemble this like super flexible component on the spot with composables alone. This is a bit tricky option. You have to test composables. Composables are a bit tricky to test. So, you can also ship components without CSS, a headless way. So you can take a look at headless UI and implementations like that. This is like very, very minimal way to handle components. And I think that's it. If you have some suggestions for me, like which parts I missed, or if you have some questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Thanks, Yauheni. Thanks for your cheerful presentation and speech. Thanks a lot. So do we have any questions from the chat? I don't see any as for now. Yeah, I think, the topic about the customization something is really deep, and as many times as you can avoid it, you should avoid it. That's, my opinion. And behavior of the component should be determined by his API, by its API. So if you can consider designers to make something that you think will work better, try to do that. Okay. We don't have any questions, so I think that's time to wrap up. I'm reminding you guys that we always open to you as a participants, and if you like to present to the next event, please contact us on our email. Also, we'll mail you, every one of you, with the recording of this meeting and additional information like repos, like links and stuff like that. Thanks everyone for participating.